Anthony and
It's Marcus.
Marcus.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit what you've been doing, man? Other than that,
So our company, Welcome to Reality, has really been focusing on trying to address some of the issues around social media, particularly in Connecticut, and Mr. Stallworth has been doing some work outside of Connecticut. And he'll elaborate on that in a bit. But our main focus is to really look at these young people, this new generation, and this new technology society, and trying to figure out a way to merge some of what they're sort of being inundated with on a daily basis, how they're internalizing the images, the imagery, the music they listen to, and how that impacts how they externalize it. In addition to that, we know for certain that a lot of these kids are using those tools that can be used in a productive way and in a not so productive way. And a lot of them are doing things that are ultimately, in the long run, either, not necessarily the long run, either short term or long term, will have long term impact on their beings, who they are, and how people perceive them. So we're trying to do some work around doing some coaching, and we redeveloped or rewrote a curriculum, and the curriculum that we're working on is called Mentoring Through Media. So we're taking these social media aspects, and we're basically working with them where they're at with the tools that they're used to, and we're trying to give them some insight on how these tools that they use ultimately are impacting them in a negative way and influencing their overall behavior. And Mr. Stallworth can elaborate just a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of our work we've been doing has kind of been psychoeducational in nature, trying to reach and address some of these young folks about everything that Anthony just alluded to. But on a broader level, this isn't just solely connected to young ones. So what we found in our travels and our research, that adults are also suffering or struggling with trying to find that healthy balance of how much interaction and interfacing with social media and technology, what that should look like, and how much of that human interpersonal connectivity and relationship component should be present. So, we realize that it's not just youngsters, and even for adults, a lot of times, a lot of the comments that we hear is, well, it's just easier to send a text, or it's just quicker to send a quick email. But a lot of times we're discovering that, again, that interpersonal piece is missing. And
tell me some of the negative effects of social media, though, on these young ones.
how much time you have?
I just say.
So I'll just mention a couple briefly, and then Anthony could probably chime in on a few. So he makes a great point talking about how there could be short-term and long-term ramifications. So what a lot of folks really don't have a really good understanding is, once you post some of this material online, essentially it's there forever. So folks can post something, being upset, not really thinking things through, but once you put it there, anybody in the world can see it. We've worked with business owners, we've worked with creditors, we've worked with colleges and secondary institutions where, you do your application, you do those standard inquiries, but a lot of times they're also looking at other pieces to get a better idea of, or better sense of your character. So if you're posting things that are suggestive in nature or questionable, folks are looking at that material too and said, hey, should we make an investment on you as an individual, where some of these things that you might be posting, whether it's quotes, thoughts, or pictures, might be indicative of something that is not congruent to what you might have written on paper when you had time to plan and prepare. And we see a whole bunch of examples about that across the line, and that's just kind of one perspective.
So I'll give a little more concrete example of that. So here's a for instance. So for instance, you go out on a Friday night, and then you go out on Saturday night, and then you decide to go out on Sunday night, and you decide on Sunday night when you get home you want to post something online that says, yeah, not going to work tomorrow, I got smashed last night. So that one post can be viewed by a creditor. So if you're applying for a credit card, and I see you're the type of individual that goes out on a Sunday night and you get inebriated to the point that you can't wake up to go to work the next day, I'm less inclined to give you a loan, because I'm not sure how often you get inebriated. And oftentimes those people who do that, they post those type of captions all the time. In addition to that, as a former college admissions counselor, so when someone submits their application, years ago when I was in that working in that sort of area, Facebook wasn't what it is today. Snapchat and all these other sort of social media outlets, they didn't exist. So we only knew what you wrote on a piece of paper. Today, everything is being exposed. So colleges, although there's supposed to be some laws around which states or universities, whether they be a lot of these universities do have the capacity, although they're not supposed to, they still have the capacity to go online and see what you post. And as a result of that, if I'm a college admissions counselor and I'm looking to look at my school as a school that has some credibility, I really am going to be a little hesitant about allowing that young person who wants to come to my school, who's posting naked pictures, who's posting God knows what they post online. So I'm going to be a little apprehensive about allowing you to come into the school. And those are some of the things that we discussed, not only with young folks. Mr. Stallworth was absolutely correct. We try to educate adults and parents and caregivers. You need to monitor and watch what your kids are doing online, because we all know 16, 14, 18-year-old kids have no clue oftentimes what they're doing. We don't want to get super scientific and get into this whole thing about gray matter, but we know that the gray matter in young men and young women's brain doesn't develop until into their 20s, and for men almost closer to their 30s. So oftentimes they're doing these things and they have no clue what the ramifications and impact is going to be. So that's where we try to come in and assist them and try to educate them on some of the do's and don'ts.
I know that they take greater risks, a lot of these young folks do, being you were talking about the gray matter itself, how they take these risks because the gray matter is still, not formed around their brain yet. Mm-hmm. But now, how about these folks that post things on Facebook? I'm going to the store. I'm on vacation with my children. And what are they doing to themselves?
Because I think analogies really kind of help people understand the grasp how serious this is. So just imagine this, for example. We've all probably been to Times Square, right? And this is one of the things that we talk about when we talk to adults. We've all probably been to Times Square, or at a minimum, you've seen it. So there could literally be hundreds of thousands of people in Times Square at one time. So imagine standing in the middle of Times Square and saying, listen, I'm from New Haven, Connecticut. I live at such and such and such and such, and I'm here right now, and I'm staying up the street at the W for the weekend. Doing that is, so if you did that, all those people that can in earshot could hear you. But when you do it online, you're exposing that to the world. So you're magnifying that millions of times over. And that's a much, much dangerous thing for people to do. So we really try to explain it from that perspective. Who would go to New York and just say, listen, I'm out of town, I'm here, I want everybody to know I'm here, and I'm not going to be home. So you're just opening yourself up to multiple dangers by doing that. And that's just an analogy that I think really connects with people when we kind of explain it that way. You just can't throw your stuff, your personal information out there to the masses in the world that we live in. We actually show a video when we do our training, and it shows you how to track somebody down. It's called Tracking Teresa. You can look it up on YouTube. Literally, within 20 minutes, you can find out my name, my wife's name, where I live, pretty much everything about me within 20 minutes. It's that dangerous. And there's people who are very, very tech savvy, and those who are tech savvy easily could find you, me, or any of us at any given time. To the point that all these mobile devices that we currently have right now a lot of them have tracking mechanisms on it. So there's a program right now, it's called Foursquare. So if me and you are connected on Foursquares, wherever I am in the world, you can pinpoint me within a 4-foot radius. 4 foot. So a lot of times people use it and say, well, I only use it because we're out of town and you're on this part of town, I'm on this part of town, and it gives you GPS guidance to show you exactly where I am right now. So you could just find me. That's
great.
scary. But a lot of these applications, when you go on your phone and it says, allow us to have your location, that's what that means. So people could easily find you if they get the right information that's connected to you. So we try to share that with the parents and the kids as well. Not to scare them, but just to make it, just to bring them to reality. Like this it's a dangerous, dangerous world we live in. I agree. I agree.
What kind of protection, is set up out there really to protect folks from things like that? I mean, getting the right firearm, I guess, on computer helps, but is there something else?
So, the first line of protection, quite frankly, is knowledge and information and education. So what we experience, especially when we travel across state lines, these adults are shocked and appalled of the access, the ability, the resources, the apps, the hidden apps, the text words, the technology, the covert ways that information is disseminated. But ask a 12-year-old. They know. So it's kind of like having the birds and bees talk with your children, right? A lot of times folks kind of shy away from that because of their own uncomfortability with that conversation. And often, by the time they get to that point, it's probably too late, or they already had some introduction and exposure. So we talk about analogies. If you have any piece of technology that you're struggling with, give it to a kid who's born under the last 12 years. They will download it, reroute it, recalibrate it, set it up, change the password, adjust the volume in minutes, if not seconds. So they're aware of that. So that education piece and that knowledge is like the first sign or line of protection. And then, there are other pieces that you can read or purchase that can offer some safety, but nobody can be everywhere 100% of the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And I hate to even ask you about the predators that, that are out there now, that really hunt down your children.
So we do this great exercise in one of our classes, and we ask folks, even adults, who are significant people in your life? Like if you can identify 3 significant people who are safeguard individuals in your world, and we have them think about who they are, right? And then we say, okay, now imagine we're gonna ask you to write them a thank you letter, and we're gonna go old school. So we want you to give them their full name, their address, and their telephone number, without looking in your phone, right? And it can't be a house that you grew up in as a child. And do you know that 95% of the folks cannot identify all 3? But these are significant people in the world, so they rely on that technology to be the keeper of that information. But these are significant relationships in your world, and yet you are struggling to identify means of communication and even locating them on your own.
That's scary.
So that's a parallel process that we kind of use. And you make a great point about the friends. So different statistics tell you different things, but well over 100 to be moderate, conservative. They say on average people have as friends.
134.
134, if we want to be technical. So that 134, who has another 134, who has another 134. So when you say you're going out to South Beach for the weekend, there's people who know your business you've never met in your whole entire life. And a lot of times folks don't understand that, and kids are very impressionable. They want to be inclusive and not on the outside. So the more friends you have or more people following you gives the kind of belief that you might be something special or part of the in crowd. And a lot of the work that we share and educate, there's a lot of behaviors that are very, very congruent to diagnostic categories in the DSM-4 and the DSM-5. So when you have kids or adults who have physical anxiety or withdrawal if they leave their phone at home, or they can't get to their device, or if their battery is low, right? It's happened to all of us in certain ways, right? Some folks are so connected, and they actually call it something that's called FOMO, fear of missing out. And that fear and anxiety can be so great within some individuals that it can interrupt focus and concentration, sleep, and in-person relationships. So we just try to, again, not to scare folks, but to elevate and raise their awareness, and then we try to make efforts to give them some comprehensive, cheap, and realistic strategies that they can implement immediately with their friends, families, and kids on their caseload if that's what the case is.
So I just want to add something really quick because I think you wanted to jump in. I just want to share just some funny sort of things that sort of connect this. So earlier Marcus was talking about, having your kids fix your phone or help you reconnect. I don't know if you guys ever seen a commercial. There's actually a commercial where these two teenagers, they're coming to visit their grandparents. And as soon as they get on the porch, before they can even ring the doorbell, the grandmother and the grandfather runs out with a cell phone, a laptop, and something else, and they hand it to them. We're so glad you're here. Because they're waiting for their grandkids to come over. That's a reality. That's a reality. That's how connected and well these kids know the devices. And just to talk about the connection to these devices, we share this as well. So I've seen this at work. I've seen these two things at work, and not to try to skeeve or gross anybody out, but it's a reality. I can go to work and go into the men's room, and someone can be in the bathroom, on the phone, in the bathroom. You're so connected to your device that you can't take a bathroom break to get away from your phone. And just last Thursday, I walked in, a man was in the urinal taking a selfie.
Ew.
While using the men's room, and in my mind I'm saying you gotta. In my mind I'm saying you gotta be kidding.
Really,
Yes,
it's
really
even worse for kids. And
Yes.
what we see, and I heard you say you're a behavioralist, so you probably could speak to this as well because we've seen it. You take a phone from a kid.
They want to fight you.
Some of them fight their parents, physically fight their parents, or they will. You just can't take these devices away from them. And something needs to be done about that, because if that's an addiction.
Yes.
It's an addiction. So you're addicted to something. They need treatment. They need help. And we can only do what we can do to educate, but it's only going to get worse as new applications come out, as new forms of social media come out. And the other thing that I just wanted to add about all of this that's important is we're talking about social media and the impact of social media, but the other piece of this that we really didn't tap into as of yet is there's also what kids are being inundated with on TV, what they're listening to on the radio, and those music videos. And how does that impact how they externalize and interact with each other in terms of having formal, real positive, effective, communicative relationships?
My grandson did a essay to get into college on this subject right here. How young kids are affected by the videos, especially negative videos that are presented before them, especially along the line of hip hop and rap music, and the wild girls and the exploitation of women. How these things affect the young mind that's not capable or smart enough to really
Separate the fake from the reality.
There you go. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because
Sure, Mr. Stallworth, and jump right into it.
So that's actually one of the reasons why we came up with the name of our company, because what we learned very early is that folks are really having a difficult time disassociating what's really real and what is fictitious. So, 15 years ago, maybe you'd watch a movie. Maybe you'd watch, I don't know, Die Hard with Bruce Willis or Terminator, right? You'd watch the movie, you'd see it as entertainment, you'd go back to your room or you'd leave the theater. Nobody was jumping out of buildings to jump into a speedboat, to jump over a bridge, because they knew that was just entertainment. What's happening these days is the things that some folks, not just young folks, are being introduced and exposed to, they are really, really having a difficult time understanding that is fiction or recreation. So they're saying, if I act like this and I do this, then I can get what he has, the girls or the money or the acceptance or the car. So then they start to behave that way. And conversely, then the females say, well, if I want to be accepted and I want the boys to like me, then maybe I need to think about how I dress, how I let them talk to me, and what advancements I'm willing to consider and what concessions I'm willing to make. So while these things are happening simultaneously, we're not even going to add the hormones and things inside, right? And most adults who have children are working very, very hard, 9 to 5, many times further than that, trying to make a better quality of life for their children. So while they're hard at work, who or what is the source of information that kids are being exposed to, and much of it is way past adult-like, even though it's marketed to kids at a very, very adolescent, sometimes elementary level.
So a parent really has to really step on this thing. I
Sure.
think, because they can suddenly run into a room one day and find that's not even their child anymore.
That's right.
I think that's happening a lot.
It is.
I think it's happening a lot. And I just want to add, as Mr. Starwood was saying, you know, this social media in terms of, so it goes even further, because I'm really trying to hit a little bit of everything that we do. So we look at the music videos. We look at mobile devices. But we even oftentimes, you have to look at print ads. If you look at some of the ads in some of these magazines, there's no reason that if you're selling, if there's no reason that if you're selling a Whopper or if you're selling a Ford, what does a naked woman, half-naked woman in a bikini have to do with selling a Ford Fusion?
Everything.
Right. It does, but what type of message is that sending to the masses? You know, or the Burger King commercial with Paris Hilton washing a car in a bikini, biting a Whopper. Like, what's the connection? And that's intentional, because for what other reason would that happen? There could be no other reason that can happen. They know the power of sexuality.
Yeah.
So because sexuality is something that can sell, they market it in a way that kids are being inundated with it. I think one of the statistics, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think kids see, or everyone sees over 1,000 different advertisements daily, every day, and we don't even realize it. So, you know, I'm looking at your headphones, advertisement. I'm looking at this, advertisement. So everything's advertisement, and all this is impacting us subconsciously, and it influences what we want or what we don't want. And I'll say this lastly, I go back to this swag thing. And when we talk to these kids, we always talk about swag, because every kid has swag. They always talk about how much swag they have, but in reality, they really don't. Because the way you or I would define swag is that you have your own individuality. But if I'm standing in a line with 1,300 other kids waiting to get a pair of Jordans, on Monday morning, we're all going to have the same Jordans. I don't got swag. I'm a carbon copy of you, because Michael Jordan or Jay-Z, Allen Iverson, or whomever is the individual of that sort of time span is saying, this is what's popular, this is what makes you cool. And we have to get kids to understand that it's more about what's in your head and your heart than what's on your feet and on your back. And we really, really try to get them to understand that, because kids feel less worth or less self-worth when they don't have those type of things. And oftentimes they feel ostracized, and I'm quite sure you see this in school. Those kids tend to isolate, so what do they have? Social media. Because I don't have friends in school, so I could go home and I could say whatever I want to say behind a computer. I could do whatever I want to do behind a computer. I can gather whatever type of information I want to gather behind a computer, and not to take it way to the left. But some of these kids that are isolated are oftentimes the kids that explode in a way that ends up on the paper or ends up on the news. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, they're